Good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Welcome back to the CI Chit Chat. I'm Mitchell Hora, as always. I'm the founder and CEO here at Continuum, and got a special guest with me today, Jaiden Bauer. He's a dealer up in North Dakota. We'll circle back around to Jaiden and let him give the full intro and share what he's been seeing up there. These guys have been pushing really hard on the CI space, and it's been fun to work together. Let me tee things up a little bit for anyone that's new, as we always do. What the heck are we talking about here when it comes to this whole CI thing? CI is a acronym, and CI stands for carbon intensity. Carbon intensity is essentially the carbon footprint of a fuel, and part of the carbon footprint of fuels comes from what that fuel is produced from. Namely, we're talking about biofuels here, where we're utilizing corn or soybeans to produce biofuels. Those biofuels including ethanol, but also biodiesel, renewable diesel, sustainable aviation fuel. And so part of the carbon footprint of those fuels is the feedstock carbon footprint. And it's actually about more than 50% for most ethanol plants. When we're thinking about ethanol, we're thinking about corn, that the corn has a very high carbon footprint. We can measure that corn's carbon footprint with the same unit of measure. The same unit of measure, that unit of measure being the carbon intensity score. So at Continuum Ag, we're helping farmers get their carbon intensity score and document the farm practices to get that score verified, which happens for every field. Because part of the score is how much fertilizer did you use? What was your yield? What was the fuel that you used? What was your tillage, your cover crop, your manure, whatever practices you were doing? Those practices go into our software. It's called Topsoil. We document those farm practices. We run the carbon intensity score, and whatever score we want to claim, right? Whatever score you did, you've got to back it up. We've got to substantiate that claim. It goes through a third-party audit, just like an organic farmer would do when they are claiming that they are organic. We're claiming, here's our CI score. We've got to document the practices in the same way. And this is going to take plenty of work. That's where we're starting now. We've got a couple billion bushels that needs to go into, or that a couple billion bushels will go into biofuel in calendar year 2025, which is when these tax credits start. So that couple billion bushels, they're going to have a CI score, and they already do have a CI score. Whether you think that this stuff is a bunch of crap or not, doesn't really matter. Your bushels already have a score on them, and your score is currently a default number given to you by the Department of Energy. Most counties have a default score of around 29 to 30. And what we want to help you do is prove that you're better than the default. And we've already ran these scores on over 250 million bushels. We're now publicly announcing over 250 million bushels, representing about over 1.3 million acres. And we found that instead of those bushels having a score of around 29 to 30, the average farmer score is an 11.0. 11.0. So significantly better than the default. And we need more farmers quantifying their scores, documenting their practices, so that we can help our friends in the biofuel industry to really maximize this thing. This is a biofuel producer tax credit. It's called 45Z, part of the Inflation Reduction Act. And in order to really lower the footprint of the gallons of biodiesel or biofuel, we've got to have low carbon bushels. It's going to take a heck of a lot of them. And that's what we're all here to do. So nobody's been pushing harder from a dealer side than you, Jaiden. So I've been scoring a lot of bushels. Excited to dig into this with you. I think you're our first non-Continuum Ag person that we've had on the Chit Chat. So, but I think it's super fitting. You've been pushing on this really hard, and it's been awesome to work with you and stuff. But anyway, Jaiden, why don't number one, thanks for hopping on, but introduce yourself, introduce Farmer's Choice, and we go from there.
Yeah, well, I'm Jaiden Bauer. I'm a fourth generation farmer up here in North Dakota. Born and raised in a pretty small town, about 300 or 400 people population. So, yeah, farming is our community, and I'm happy to be back here, doing stuff, working with them. Farmer's Choice is the dealer I work with. I kind of had ideas of this whole CI score thing before I came to work for Farmer's Choice. And one of your past employees, had really pitched this to me, and I was just like, man, I got a few dealers of my own around the area that I'd like to visit with, and Farmer's Choice just really set the bar for everybody around here on regenerative ag and doing things a different mindset. And I got speaking with the guys here, and they were super interested in this, and we kind of just started connecting the dots, and that's how I ended up coming over here to Farmer's Choice.
Yeah.
There was all sorts of things that just lined up with things that Farmer's Choice is doing, using carbon-based fertilizers, using drones to apply. The drones are kind of not really a big staple thing up here, with our vast acres. It's taken a little bit of time for people to adjust, but once they see them work, it's awesome. And the availability of we live about 30 miles. Well, our I live about 30 miles from an ethanol facility. And that one of our plants is pretty close there. So yeah, like I said, everything just kind of fell in place, and yeah, I'm really happy to be here. Farmers Choice, they're growers as well. Like you couldn't get a better group of
Yeah.
people to work with because they are, they're um, very in this space, I guess you could say. They've been doing all these regenerative practices for a few years now, and yeah, it's really taken off. It's awesome the support that we get from our growers, and it's awesome the support I myself get from Farmers Choice. It's
Yeah.
great. So
And I was gonna say, yeah, go a little bit deeper into Farmer's Choice. You've laid out pretty well there. It's my understanding Farmer's Choice, they're an ag retailer, right? And doing
yep,
agronomy services and stuff. But it was started by a couple of farmers. A couple of farmers who
yes.
said, hey, let's just start our own thing, right? And then now they just continue to stack and add these other services for their own farm, but for these other farmers too.
Yeah, and one of the coolest things I've seen, a lot of people say that they have seen something work, or we've seen people try it before. The biggest thing here, I came from a position where I was an RSM for a company, and when I came into the door here, they were like, "Well, we really like your message of this product, but we do not put our any products out of the door unless we've vetted at least 2 years on our farms." So they have to. I mean, they put a lot of thought and work into making sure everything's working on a farm before they're selling it. So that's awesome. For me as alone, I farm as well, so I take my retail hat off and go up farm, and I know what it takes, and yeah, so it's
Love it.
awesome.
Love it. And this is why we've, I think, connected so well too and had such good success with these guys that, I started Continuum Ag to service my family farm as well. It started off that we needed soil health data, and then we needed to go further and be able to get that data into some software. So we started with the Haney test, right? And consulting. Then we needed software to be able to manage all this data and make decisions with it. So we started building software. Now it's okay, we need to take what we're doing and connect to the end consumer or connect into some of these sustainability programs. And nothing has really worked out for our farm because we've been doing these practices so we don't qualify when we have to trigger additionality or when we're looking at different carbon credit programs. Then, a year and a half ago, this carbon intensity thing came about, and I was able to score my farm and just flip the company on its head, saying we have got to get these scores for my own farm. I needed to get my scores field by field. I needed to get all that data documented so that I could actually work with my local ethanol plant and we go collaborate together to capitalize on these tax credits. So, but point being is everything that we've done here, we've built it for my own family farm, but then of course now for the goal being a million other family farms as well. So, I mean,
Yep.
it's just building, and that's I think where we've been able to connect with people and have success is that I'm my family and myself, I farm as well, right? we're customer number one. Like we need this stuff too. We're right there with the rest of the customers as well. And so I think that resonates super well with what you guys are doing also. And I think why things have just clicked as well as what they have, because it's the same mentality that we're doing this stuff for our own farms. And hey, if we can help a bunch of other, our neighbors and our friends and stuff too, sweet, let's do it. But
Yeah.
so Jen, you've been really pushing this and we're over 250 million bushels, and you've scored a lot of bushels. One of the questions here that we got, and folks, put in your questions into the chat. Looking forward to digging into some of this stuff. I've got a couple of them that came in over the last week here, but Bryce is asking how CI quantified. And Jane, you've been doing this with a ton of farmers, so maybe why don't you, from your words, walk through how is CI quantified?
Yeah. So CI is just, I guess, a set of parameters that were set by the Department of Energy. Basically, how much energy is used to produce that bushel of corn that you are putting out, or that bushel of, we'll just say canola because we're in North Dakota.
Mhm.
So yeah, and really a lot of things going through like the topsoil tool and everything like that, and me working through this, I got a lot more understanding for it, just kind of doing the boots on the ground type of deal. A lot of it is weighed in off of basically your nitrogen or nutrient use efficiency, not just nitrogen use efficiency, but yeah, your how many pounds of N you're using versus how many bushels of corn you're producing. If you're able to bring that down, that's going to be one of the biggest things that are going to lower your score. And most everybody can do that practice in
Mhm.
their area. There are the world of agronomy, agriculture, all in general, is growing substantially. I mean, we just look in the last year, all the different companies that are coming with different products and things like that. It can be quite the space to try to wrap your mind around, but yeah, there is plenty of things that a guy can be doing right now to reduce those.
Yeah.
And then basically, that bushel of grain is going to be going towards your ethanol plant and produced into a biofuel, aviation fuel. And that is where the value is coming from. The Department of Energy has put that 5.4 cents per bushel per point below the 29.1.
Mhm.
And they are giving that value to the ethanol plant. Now, Mitchell has done great work. Continuum, the whole team at Continuum has done great work to really leverage the farmer. And there's going to be a share of some sort from the ethanol plant. A lot of people kind of argue that point, and you just kind of, I mean, you just kind of got to realize, there is a cost for them to be doing some of this stuff as
Yep.
well.
Yep.
So yeah, so that's kind of how it would work.
Yeah.
We're going to be getting a value for your grain for the energy that you are using or not using.
Yeah. Yeah. And what you're sequestering and stuff to offset the energy that you're using, right? With the
Yeah.
current crops or manure or no-till and stuff like that. And yeah, the payout to exactly like you're getting at, it's a biofuel tax credit. So the biofuel manufacturers, they get the tax credit because it's tied to the production of the fuel. The biofuel manufacturer earns up to 2 cents per CI point reduced per gallon, and that's reduced from a baseline of 50. So any point that the ethanol plant can reduce their overall weighted average score below 50, that's how they earn a credit, and they can utilize our low carbon bushels to do it. Tim had a question here also asking about how do you find your CI score? And like Jaden was just sharing, you go to topsoil.ag, fill out a farm profile. If you're working with a dealer, they can show you what your score is. If you want to just go direct to topsoil, you can utilize the code BBC95 to join the Billion Bushel Challenge and get your CI score for just $25. So go to topsoil.ag though, and it'll walk you through that. So another question coming in here from David. If I have grain already contracted for fall delivery, can I still receive a low CI premium? He's strip tilling and cover cropping, so that's great. He'll have a low CI score already.
Yeah.
But Jaden, has this come up at all? Have you guys, as you guys
Um,
think about grain marketing and stuff, or I've got
yeah,
some thoughts too, but any hot take on how you're marketing grain for this?
So we are working with a few different marketers here. Uh, we, kind of how we're talking about it, and we're still kind of out. Wouldn't say in the weeds too much about it, but we are trying to learn a little bit more. With the regulatory side of things still coming down the pipeline. But how we are talking, is it's still going to be a premium paid after the first of the year. So contracted grain should not be affected by that one bit. It would be a separate contract of its own,
Mhm.
and we'll be able to mitigate any problems in that by going through your topsoil tool, and kind of being able to show, like, hey, this is the bushels that we've raised either way, if it's contracted or not,
Yep.
this is what you used.
Yeah, I think it's going to be that the contract is set up for the grain, and then there's a CI contract that's kind of a addendum to the contract. I
Mhm.
think it's going to be an add-on. It's going to be a after the fact, right? So market your grain the way that you've been doing it, then you'll add the CI score to it after the fact. And I just got a private message here from Matthew. And he's saying the government hasn't finalized all the standards for 45Z, which is exactly what Jaden, you just kind of mentioned it too. We don't know all the final rules yet, which majorly sucks because some of the rules were supposed to be put out on March 1st. And now we're sitting almost 2 months later with nothing and no
Yeah.
indication of when some of this is gonna happen. Um, so we're still continuing to watch, and you guys will know as soon as we know anything about the updated Greek model and about the rules. You guys will know, and we anticipate that we're gonna hold like a emergency press conference kind of thing, and get out on camera here and help you guys and understand and walk through this. And we'll know if this is really full speed ahead, let's rock and roll, or if it's maybe not going to be quite as amazing as what the law says. Matthew's also asking, what about the change in leadership in the White House? We got an election coming up this fall. It comes up every time. We don't know, of course, but say Trump gets elected, he's very pro biofuels and farmer and middle America. Now, we're not sure what all is going to happen here with these tax credits and stuff. That it is it was a Biden administration bill, right, and policy, but this 45Z piece specifically has very, very good bipartisan support. It's already gone through a couple different debt ceiling bill discussions and had very good bipartisan support saying, no, we need to keep this one in. This actually does a lot of good. It's getting farmers and biofuel manufacturers to work together to lower America's carbon footprint, to make American energy more resilient and more sustainable. So very good bipartisan support. But we'll see as the new rules come out and uh, as we see what happens in the future. It is a tax credit, though. It's all very fragile, and that's what we continue to push people that whatever the opportunity is going to be, right? This is just kind of the flavor of the week right now, right? We've had carbon credits, there's carbon insets, there's climate smart commodity programs, there's cost share programs, there's other sustainability initiatives, and now there's carbon intensity and 45Z. There's all these different opportunities, and they're all going to come and go. These things don't last forever. So the whole push is, hey, if you can make some money, utilize that money and invest it back in the resiliency and the sustainability of your family farm, and make sure that you're set up to be more profitable, be more resilient for when these programs go away, because they will go away. Like, it's a tax credit. They don't stay forever. In stroke of a pen, they're gone. So make hay while the sun's shining, right? That's why we're pushing on this so hard. This is currently a 3-year tax credit, fuel produced in 2025 through 2027. Okay, so 3-year tax credit, and we got to capitalize on as much as possible. It's billions of dollars in opportunity, and we want to make sure that those dollars get brought to Middle America. So,
Yeah,
uh,
I I
yeah, Jaden,
I
is
get a
that
lot
kind of
of
your take?
yeah, we get a lot of pushback up here. There isn't a whole lot of people that are willing to talk about 45Z in North Dakota, and
Mm,
I don't know if that's more, you know, but I've sat through lots of carbon talks and things like that. And yes, there are the private market guys that are going through it, and some of the universities and things like that are talking a little bit, but a lot of it's on the 45Q side. And um, that I'll reserve my opinion on a lot of that stuff, but it, it gets a little frustrating at points, like we have these 3 years to get it going. And I fear, like, well, we don't get this off the ground. Eventually, it's just going to be instead of a premium that we would be getting for it, it would be more of a dockage type of deal. And, like we can see that kind of rolling down. You look into Canada with their carbon tax
Yeah.
stuff. You look in, Rabo with their different interest programs, we'll just say.
Mm.
So yeah, it's interesting to like us farmers have to band together and kind of bring this up on our own, because it seems like the government's kind of failing us on this. With the, like we spoke about the SAF with sugarcane and all that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very interesting.
All kinds of different stuff there. So, and especially as we continue to get a lot of new people jumping on this, let me explain a couple different things that Jaden said there, because I haven't talked about it for a while either. So I'm glad you brought it up, Jaden. There's actually three different tax credits that are kind of in this space. We're mostly focused on 45Z. That's a biofuel producer tax credit, and it's based on the carbon intensity score of the biofuel. You can reduce that CI score of the biofuel by utilizing a carbon capture system like a pipeline. You could use more renewable energy. You could do a variety of other things at the facility, but also you can buy low carbon corn and soybeans or other feedstock. And you can stack all these things. You can do multiple. If you've got carbon capture, you can also purchase low carbon grain and get 45Z. And the biofuel producer gets the tax credit. In 45Q, that's a carbon capture and geological storage, permanent geological storage, which happens when you're taking this carbon, compressing it into a liquid and pumping it, a couple thousand feet deep, putting it in the hole in the ground, like the carbon capture companies are doing it with the pipelines and stuff like that. And in that case, you get paid so much per ton that's either captured or utilized. And it can be utilized for beverage purposes and food grade purposes, stuff like that. But for the most part, we're talking about it would have been emitted, capture it, put it in a hole in the ground. That's 45Q. There's also 40B, which is really what the March 1 rules are supposed to be about. 40B is just like 45Z, except for it's only for sustainable aviation fuel. And there's, of course, some nuances that are different, but it's sustainable aviation fuel only. 45Z is sustainable aviation fuel plus ethanol, biodiesel, renewable diesel. So, and yeah, a variety of these other programs like Jaden, I mean, you were talking about private industry and other governments and stuff pushing more this direction. That's why I'm so bullish on this. Like the concept is just so right in my mind that we're going to be documenting our farm practices, run a variety of different environmental outcomes on those practices. Today, we're talking about carbon, but it's going to be water quality or biodiversity or other sustainability metrics. But it starts with what are your practices? Let's run the equation. Let's get that third party verified. And that story goes with the product through the supply chain. As we're not only producing low carbon fuel, but low carbon beef, low carbon eggs, low carbon milk, low carbon exported grains, or whatever we're producing. The concept is just so right in my mind and it all takes data. It all takes data from the farmer. And that's really what you guys have been pushing on, getting guys started with now is like, hey, if you're not ready to fully enroll in certification and pay the $5 an acre, that's fine. But at least know what your CI score is today and at least be paying attention because this is a big freaking deal.
Yeah, and what I really like about this whole deal, you hear a lot of pushback on the whole carbon market, and
Yeah.
we shouldn't be selling a value for something that um, doesn't make any sense. But like with Continuum and with us, like this is kind of like we have the power to kind of make this work
Yeah.
as farmers. Like if we leave it up to a university to build this program, or leave it up to other entities, I guess, to build this program, it kind of just leaves us at the end of the line saying, okay, here's your value. Yes, we have to jump through some hoops as well, but if we take charge on this, it will help us, expand, move forward, and actually be able to have a voice in this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, we gotta be able to make sure that there's collaboration, right? And equitable share is what I always say.
Yep.
That hey, farmers can reduce their CI score. Biofuel companies need to reduce their CI score. Let's collaborate together here. And Brent's got a question in here on, do row crops qualify for this program and for this money? Row crops don't qualify for this money. Biofuel producers get the money or get the tax credit. They don't actually get paid cash. They get a tax credit. But in order for the biofuel producer to get the tax credit, they can utilize low carbon bushels, and therefore farmers can collaborate, and maybe we can all work together and earn some money. So the farmer themselves that doesn't get the tax credit, the biofuel producer gets the tax credit, and they can collaborate together to capitalize and bring as much dollars to their rural community as possible. Bob was on. I think he dropped, but we got this recorded for you, Bob. So Bob's got a great question that he put in here. Do ethanol companies need to reduce their carbon number by 50% to get 45Z? Can they do it just by buying low CI corn, or do they have to have carbon sequestration to get to the target? So it's the magic number is a CI score of 50, and it's kind of like 50% of a regular fossil fuel gasoline. Fossil fuel gasoline has a CI score of about 98, and we're talking about a CI score here of 50. So it's not an exact percentage, it's the number itself that we're based on, not the percentage, but it kind of is about 50%. But anyway, the magic number though is a CI score of 50. What we don't know today and why this continues to sit is we don't have the updated GREET model for the ethanol companies to get their score, and therefore to know how close to 50 are they, which is what Bob's getting at. Most ethanol companies today, with the current version of the GREET model, most companies today have a CI score in the mid to low 50s. So they're kind of within striking distance of that magic number of a 50. Say they're at 55 today. If you're at a 55 today, you could buy low carbon bushels of corn to lower your CI score and get below 50, and you'll be sitting pretty good. We found that our average farmer has a CI score of an 11 rather than a 29, right? So that's an 18-point drop. Now you'd have to get all your farmers to participate at that level, and you would go from a 55 minus those 18 points, and you'd be significantly in the money. What we're waiting on is the new modified GREET model, which has everything that I'm hearing, the ethanol company's baseline CI score is probably going to go up. And it's going to go up based on indirect land use change. We don't have time to dig into it today, but likely that score won't be starting at, say, it's a 55 today. It won't be a 55. It might be more like a 60. Maybe if it gets worse than a 5-point increase, we're probably going to struggle. But say that they change the GREET model and basically all American biofuel goes up by an extra 5 or so points. In that case, now every ethanol company is starting further from the baseline number of 50 or further from the magic number of 50. If they're still within striking distance, they could get there just with the corn and buy the low carbon corn, and they could still get there because the farmers, on average, that we've found anyway, they would have reduced the CI score by 18 points, so you could still get there. Now it's going to take volume. We got to get more people aware of this. We've got 250,000,000 bushels that are aware and ready, but there's 5.4 billion bushels that goes into ethanol, so we got a long way to go. And sorry for the long-winded answer here, but back to Bob's question though, if a ethanol company is starting higher than a 60, say they end up where they're starting at a 65 or a 70, it might be really tough to get their CI score low and below 50 with only the farmers, unless they're really pushing and really get aggressive. Like I believe the farmer can get there. My CI score is a -4, so that's a 33-point reduction from the baseline in my county. But most farmers aren't going to be able to get that kind of a reduction. And Jaiden, you know it better than anybody. That's really tough up in North Dakota because of how the rules play out, and we'll end with that. But say the ethanol companies are starting at a 65 or 70, they probably are going to need some kind of a carbon capture system, a pipeline, or some kind of a utilization program. Implementing a carbon pipeline or that utilization reduces your CI score by, on average, about 30 points. So therefore, if you were starting at a 65 and you got that carbon capture, now you're at a 35. Now you're below 50. Now you can stack the farmer reductions as well, maybe rocking and rolling. So point being is if you're close to a 50, which there's plenty of companies that are today, you can get there with just the farmers. You wouldn't have to have a carbon capture system. If your CI score is not good, probably going to be tough to get there with only the farmers, and you're going to have to stack, and you can do a carbon capture system and bring in the low carbon farmers, and you can get below that magic number of 50. But Jaiden, up in North Dakota, there's multiple ethanol plants that already have carbon capture because you guys
Yep.
have the geological structure, right? In Iowa, we can't just drill straight down because we don't have the geological formations. You guys do.
Yep.
Multiple of your plants are already at low CI scores because of that. And now we're looking at layering the corn, maybe dig another step deeper on that, and then we'll work towards wrapping up here.
Yeah, so it speaks with a lot of our, you know, ethanol plants here. Most of them, yeah, are doing carbon capture. They are doing some sort of steps that are lowering their CI score. A lot of it right now with talks with them is just aligning themselves with their feedstock producers. Um, when this first came out, there was a lot of guys nervous that, okay, well, if we're doing this, that's just going to raise our basis. And the more talks I've had with these guys, the more, like I said, they talk more. They want to align themselves with their growers, uh, and to be honest, like the value to them is much larger on the 45Z side than it
Yep.
would be just pumping CO2 into the ground. There's a lot of maintenance involved with that. There's a lot of different things that are involved with just pumping CO2 in the ground. Plus, like a lot of our guys up here, I'm not I know talking with other producers, like their ethanol plants aren't doing anything yet, which is surprising.
Yeah.
But like up here, the few that I've spoke with, they're really, really pushing forward and trying to be the leading edge of that. And Mitchell, you've spoke with
Yeah.
them as well, and
Yeah.
yeah, they're doing pretty awesome. And I'm really excited. We have some good backing with some of those guys. We still got to wait for the regulation stuff to come through, which I have full faith that that's going to come through, and we're going to be able to hit the ground running. Actually, I'm a little bit nervous for my job's sake, just because everybody probably in November is going to be like, we're going to do this, and we got to all figure out how to get that tax
We're gonna be
money.
swamped. Yeah, that's my biggest concern is like when this does happen, we are gonna need some people and we're gonna need some patience from some
Yep.
farmers because this is gonna
Yeah.
be a mad rush. And that's why we're trying to get people going now, right? Like, hey, this is coming. Get on the ball now because it's gonna be a rush to get billions of bushels through a verification process all at the last minute. Whew, it's gonna be,
Yeah. And I've just been
a lot
telling
of work.
everybody, like, let's go into our farm practices, doing what we want to do to have that low score.
Yeah.
And from there on, like if November rolls around, or heck, if you're going to score it in January, like just let me know, because we can definitely go through that. And I'd rather you have been doing those practices and make a good impact on other things, and then still have that value when it comes.
Yeah.
And let's not go backwards in this. So
No, well, I think it's about getting ready and Jaden, I mean, kudos to you for you guys pushing. You guys have had dozens of farmers that you have scored. I don't know if you're a couple million bushels, I think is what it was. I mean,
I
you
think
guys
we're at 12 million, or just
12
ourselves.
million
Yeah.
bushels
Yep.
already scored. Like that's amazing. And
Yeah.
and it's and all you're doing is running people's scores. It takes a couple minutes, sit down, run the scores, get them ready. And then when these regulations come through, we're sitting there ready to go. 12 million bushels. Hey, let's rock and roll, and then we can layer more bushels on top of that and be able to help out our friends in the biofuel space. So this is all about being ready, getting prepared. Thanks to everyone that's jumping on and paying attention. These chats are always all recorded in our YouTube page and on the Topsoil podcast. And we got to just continue to spread the word. Hopefully, we get some clarity from the regulatory bodies here soon, but won't know until we know. But Jaden, any last words? It's been fun.
Yeah, I appreciate the time. I appreciate everybody coming on here and listening. If it don't matter if you're not from North Dakota or not. If you want to get in contact with me to learn a little bit more of how we're doing things, it might be a little bit different practices, but I'm willing to talk to everybody. Our team here at Farmers Choice, we're deep dive into all this stuff, so it's awesome, and it's been great working with you, Mitchell.
You've been here, yeah, man. It's been awesome to work with you too. Looking forward to pushing on, and let's go make this thing happen. So, everyone, thanks. Have a good day. I got to get some stuff done in the office here so I can go plant some beans. So we'll talk to y'all next week. Bye.
All right, later.